So,
Hmm.
so yeah, welcome everybody. This is I forgot. No, podcast 8. Yeah, I've been out for a month. We've all been stuck at home during quarantine and things. So let's see. How is my buddy Onagi doing? How you doing?
Well, it's not that hard to guess how I'm doing so far. Well, I'm stuck in my apartment and I see people saying Corona, Corona, Corona. My friends say Corona, my dad says Corona, and I'm trying to make myself busy as possible so that I don't become a rotten piece of couch potato that starts to grow forest around it. So, yeah, it's been, the way it's going these days.
Oh yeah, I definitely felt like a couch potato the last few days. But I am proud. I've started being able to do one arm push ups. I can do those now. I can do a
Oh,
set
nice.
I can do a set of five both arms as like where I can do it consistently. And I try to
Mhm.
do about 50 a day each arm. It hurts like hell though. And especially when you're trying to go all the way low. But I'll teach you how to do it. It's actually not as bad as I thought. And I was doing it wrong before, making it harder on myself. Now I,
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
well, because you know how like when you're doing normal push-ups, your arms in front are like your 2 points of contact, and then you put your toes as close together as possible.
Yeah,
With the
yeah.
one arm push-up, it's the opposite. You spread out your feet, and you use your arm as a 1 point of contact. And then
So okay, so it's like one of those like was it a tricycle or something like that? I forgot how
yeah,
it's called, but
and
those like making a triangle then.
mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
And oh, it hurts, but it's I don't know. It feels cool that I can do it. And eventually, I aim to be able to do. I want to be able to do like 50 per arm in one set, kind of like I can do with normal
Yeah.
push-ups. But that'll be a while from now because it hurts like hell to do five.
Nice. Teach me how to do it. I'm also like trying to get better at workouts. So
I will next time I head home. How's is Trader Joe's like still stocked? Is there a line?
um,
Like, what's the
well,
outside
Trader
like?
Joe's they decided to limit the number of people who could go inside at once. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why like every day these days when I look out the window, I see lines of people trying to get into Trader Joe's. And also like for spaghetti and those kind of things where people usually like want to get, they decide to put an upper limit in like of how much you can buy a day.
Mm.
For example, a bag of spaghetti, the limit was five. And let's see, I didn't ask too many like other ones, but I'm pretty sure like maybe things like well maybe cereal or those kind of things that are can be used to make easy food. Those things will have a limit. So and that way they are managing the situation pretty good, I guess.
Mm. Have you been able to get your groceries whenever you need?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in my house for the whole time, and most of the time I'm in front of my window, and from the window I can see the lines. So I could check real time when it's gonna be easy to get stuff.
Okay, that's good. And you have the emergency food I sent you.
Yes, yes, yes. And the emergency food that I got sent from other people that I know too. So I don't need to worry about food for a while.
I heard that Abe was gonna declare a national emergency for Japan. How's home doing for you?
Okay, so for that, I could tell you a joke that someone doesn't think is a joke, or I could tell you some other situation which people are thinking that it's a joke, but it's not a joke.
Okay, let's start
So
with the joke then.
so, so let's go with the joke that some people don't think is a joke. So there was the declaration of the state of emergency like given by Abe recently, and I also saw the live like YouTube like the live video on YouTube where the Prime Minister Abe and also the mayor of Tokyo has been like discussing or like explaining their like stance
Mm-hmm.
on the issue. And first of all, the state of emergency is not a like it's a state of emergency, but it has barely any effect. First of all, it's only there to remind people that the situation is getting bad, but it does not have any legal like strength of forcing people inside their house. And yeah, in fact, I'm not exactly sure what is going to change. Like, no, aside from people who are going to start to think a little bit more serious.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, it's Prime Minister Abe has been a little bit reluctant on like declaring the state of emergency, and that's why I guess this could be a sign of him at least changing his attitude a little bit, and that's at least a good sign. But well, they've been like I guess discussing things that might not be too beneficial to solve the situation, which might be represented by some of the policy about giving financial benefit to people whose jobs or who are in like difficult situations.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yes, people are losing jobs, or people are at least not able to work as usual. Even on just internet like forums, and interestingly, also on game forums where people talk about stuff that's not about games. There's a lot of people who are just being honest there, such as I was well in Japan. April is the time when the year starts. So this is also the season where people who graduated from college start to look for jobs, or businesses start to like refresh their like their policies and everything like that. And that's why there are a whole bunch of there. This is the time when people start to go and go like listen to how they are going to work for the next year. But some of those meetings have been canceled. Some people like did not get their new jobs because the companies did not give them any response about what to do. And in that way, yes, it is not that difficult for people to lose 50% or more of their income.
So it's the
So
same
that's
thing
why
that's happening here. I don't know if you heard in the news, but I think we hit 13 million unemployment claims.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
It's 3.3 million the first week, 6.6 million the next week, and then this week, I guess the math left over is about roughly 8 million. But
Australia is having a similar issue.
there's this really interesting graphic that I saw which shows unemployment trends for the past like 100 years, and it's just a line relatively consistent with some spikes in certain areas like the 2008 recession, and then the second it hits about 3 weeks ago, it just rises and rises like a straight line straight up that makes everything else before unemployment wise look insignificant. That was a little terrifying, very terrifying.
Well, I guess like even considering that the population is way bigger than like all the other times in history, that is pretty terrifying to hear. I'm not sure how long this thing is going to last, but it is definitely going to be something that people are going to remember for a while.
No, yeah, this a lot of people talk about it. For us here, this is our 9/11 moment, because it's not just that. Okay, people stay inside for a few weeks, for a few months. It's so people can't work. Business people don't get money to pay rent. Businesses get foreclosed upon. People when the lockdown is lifted, not everyone will go back to will have the same jobs when they go back to work. Those jobs won't be there. Companies won't be able to hire as much because they don't have the funds. And on top of that, they won't get the funds for a while because people's behaviors have changed. They won't want to go eat in a restaurant because they don't want, even when the lockdown gets lifted, people will hesitate to stay close to one another. Because what if they had a disease? The disease will still be around. And there won't be any semblance of maybe going back to prior behaviors until after there's a treatment or a vaccine that actually works. We don't want to put our own families at risk. And then other places, though, they're being hit by lockdown stay at home orders, even though they're not really hard hit, like places in the middle of the US where they're like, I forget which state it was, but they have less than 300 cases, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And yet they still have the same full lockdown orders where all businesses, all non-essential businesses have to stay inside.
Well, I guess, and also like even if the situation gets better, there is going to be a generation of people who are going to struggle. Well, this is based on some of the stuff I know from the collapse of the bubble economy back in Japan. Well, well, because I'm from Japan, so I like and I didn't really study too much history of the other countries, so maybe there's other like a better example somewhere else. But still, based on what I know, one of the things that happened at the collapse of the bubble economy, which was the basically um, the time when the Japanese economy was at the prime, uh, when that collapsed, there was a generation of people who were young, who were maybe like the people that I described a little before were exactly those, but people who were starting out their career as a adult, as a a part of society, they couldn't get jobs because well companies are struggling, they couldn't have money, or they couldn't deal with more people as an employee, and they still had to get money, so they decided to go for jobs that weren't necessarily for to their expertise. That itself is not the problem. However, the problem is once the situation gets better, well, there will be a demand for jobs that do require expertise. So they will try to get back, saying, "I studied this kind of thing in college or high school. I have this kind of experience." However, the thing is, the years that they couldn't be in the career, and the fact that they are older than the other younger, generation of people who also have similar experience, put them to a disadvantage, which significantly decreased their chance of getting a actual full-fledged job that could support them and their families. And were they given support? Not too much, because well, good or bad, new generations are going to be prioritized more than the older generation, based on what I've seen. And yes, there are people who are still struggling because of that.
And on top of
So
that, people would be losing their savings because all this pumping money into the economy, which basically the Fed is printing money, putting money into the economy that wasn't there before. So even though it helps right now immediately, what that ends up causing is inflation. It's like you've heard stories about um, between Germany between World War One and World War Two, where they
oh
printed
yeah,
so much money into the economy that people were using it kind of as toilet paper. Or is
yeah.
more useful as toilet paper than as money.
Well,
Um,
one side of me says I want to have a day where I could basically treat paper money as paper. One day I want to do that because that might be interesting. But yeah, honestly, it's not going to be just a year or two thing. It's going to be a long thing that some people. I mean, unfortunately, some people might be affected until they're dead. Like really.
no, that's
So
what actually Donald Trump talked about. He doesn't want
mm,
the cure to be worse than the virus, as unemployment rises, and people don't want to talk about this, but it will. What also goes up is violent crime, suicides, depression, alcoholism. And if those deaths exceed the deaths caused by the virus, like, is all the stuff that we did really worth it? And people don't want to have that conversation. And on top of that, people will say, well, we can't really know. We won't know what happened, like if the lockdown really is the factor into limiting the amount of cases, or um, we could have the lockdown and still hundreds of thousands and maybe millions of people die, and then people say, well, the lockdown didn't help. Um, it's something where we can't really, since we don't have different areas doing different, like, we don't have many areas. There are only, I think, like 4 states left that haven't issued lockdown orders. So we don't have a big good control. We don't know if there are other solutions which could have worked, and people don't want to have the conversation if other things could have worked. But a lot of people in the news media that leaned liberal, so most of it, they're talking about, no, this is good. We should be relying on the experts. Kind of a lot of the time fear mongering, not talking about anything but being hopeful, looking toward the future. Um, Wanting to keep everyone inside, when really it is an important conversation to have of when we can go outside and when people can start working. It's because, well, it's the economy part. People like to talk about it as, oh, it's just for big business, all the corporations, but the economy is a reflection of how well our citizens are doing, how much money we have, how well families are doing. The economy tanks, everyone gets hit by it. It's not just the big people. It's every single little guy. If the big people go under, imagine all the people who are employed by them. And think a bigger thing is, think small business accounts for about 60% of the jobs in the United States.
Yeah.
This is killing small business. We're going to see effects of this for years after this.
Yeah, if small companies get killed, of course, small companies are usually the thing that are supporting the big companies, like, So I guess, almost everyone's gonna get an effect of this. Like, the only ones who are actually gonna be probably fine are people who just have enough, like, financial or also, or maybe just knowledge of, how to protect themselves at the situation.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, just I just hope that it's gonna get a little better.
Another thing that it shows is the dangers of globalization and specifically heavily relying on China. Because one, China lies. Two, it looks like the WHO is in like within China's pocket. Did you see the video about the WHO representative refusing to acknowledge Taiwan?
Dude, I'm kind of like, sick of looking at that.
Yeah, and then
Oh,
they could tell they're lying about their numbers. They're saying they have zero new cases, but there are reports that the reason why is they stopped testing, and the reports of their deaths aren't reflective of the numbers that we're getting of people being cremated in the last month, and the amount of urns that are being shipped over for those kinds of purposes. And it's really interesting seeing high people in high levels of power, being in the news or politics, going straight to defend China rather than their own nation, calling like for there was a while where they were on calling it the Chinese virus or the Wuhan virus. I think my favorite was Kung Flu or the Flu Manchu, and like saying that was racist and or xenophobic or stuff like that, or even that the travel ban was xenophobic. And it's really sickening. Like that's a authoritarian regime, and you're like you're taking everything that they're saying without question, or versus with it's our own president, um, or our own nation when things are going well, you just want to attack it at every corner. Like, that's sick. That really is sickening. Like you gotta have some semblance of happiness if things are going well or things are going better in your nation. Like you can't hate the other side. You can't have a nation where you hate the other side so much that everything that they do is bad. That you don't recognize them
but
on the
it's not gonna
same.
be like,
Onagi, it cut out for a sec, but I was in the middle of saying how sickening it is to me that people will take the word of an authoritarian regime as gospel versus attacking whatever happens in their own nation as if it's pushed by the opposite side as evil no matter what it is.
well, it's well, I guess, well, they're also trying to make sure that they have their, like, jobs so that they don't get into the unemployment situation. But still, we have the choice to say, well, I'm not gonna give a damn about what you said. I don't believe that. So yeah, I mean,
No, we do,
if
but like
if
if anyone is to blame, it would be China, not whatever happened here because it's an unforeseen event. It's a black swan event. No one would have predicted it, and the people who got it right got lucky because there's always people who say the doomsday kind of things, and those things happen all the time. So we don't know which ones do we take seriously. Like, okay, an asteroid could take out the planet. Do we stop all? do we lock down everyone for that reason?
or maybe like the guy who's responsible for pressing a button on the nuke gets drunk and he says, hey, you know what? What happens if I push this thing? Click.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, realistically saying, there are too many ways that a country can escape from responsibility, like especially if they're in power. So I don't know how much the situation would change. I mean, if they like say, well, now that everyone knows why they need to hide, then it's possible that the situation could get even more complicated and honestly, away from just common people. So,
Yeah, my hope is that China falls apart, or at the very least, they get
um,
severely punished after this. Which I think is, I saw in the news today, that Japan is trying to get its businesses out of China. So
hmm,
there's one. I didn't get to this, but one thing we now know because of this the disruption of the global supply chain is that having so many things run through China at a base level, like the raw materials or the intermediate parts of a whole, when it comes to engineering, let's say, or manufacturing drugs or clothing or whatever it is, means that China could pull the plug at any time.
you know what? Let's say that we say no to China. In the current way, what's going to happen is like countries are going to go for another country where that you know, that could replace the job of China, and then probably something similar will happen in the country. So
Mm,
I guess
yeah.
in that way, it's going to be more of an issue of just, well, adding this to like, business ethics class or business ethics and everything like that, saying you don't necessarily want to pick things that are cheap just because they're cheap, because you know what's going to happen because of that. That money that you think you saved might not save you later on in the future or something like that. I don't know.
No, yeah, definitely. Like one thing that I've heard talk about is, people like to talk about the world as a country of nations that we're all on the same moral and economic level, same playing field. When it's really not. Like an American who's shouldn't be competing with slave wages out in some country with committing human rights violations. That isn't fair, and to say that our country is morally equivalent to that country is wrong.
Yeah, well, speaking of ethics, yeah, if what America is doing is having a lockdown, some countries use like pepper sprays and where people are gathering to to basically disperse the crowd as soon as possible.
No,
So
yeah,
yeah, it's
this
no doubt that ethics is different all around the world.
like I find it interesting how people shut up so quickly about the Hong Kong stuff.
That is true. Well, it's a typical like tactic of like people in power who don't want to talk about it, getting another topic to talk about and diverting the attention.
Yeah. Well, let's try to talk about something more fun. What movies have what movies um do you think will be doing well? Because like no one's going to movie theaters anymore, so I think most. What do you think is gonna happen to the theaters?
Um, Maybe they should sell popcorn separate from the movies. I would love that. I will go to that movie theater and just buy the popcorn and say, "Hey, you guys are awesome. Just keep on that business. I don't care about the movie because they are usually getting boring these
Oh,
days. Just give me the popcorn."
dude, what'd be awesome
What is it?
if drive-in movie theaters became popular again.
The movie theater.
Okay,
Wait, that's a thing of the past?
you don't know what this is? Okay, so basically,
Oh no, I don't know. I don't know.
there's a huge screen out in the middle of who knows
Hmm.
where, and everyone comes, pays their ticket to get in, and they're just sitting in their car and watching. It's like you drive in, like there are parking spots, you park there, um, and you just stay in your car and watch
Nice.
movies that way. Like, do you think they'll make a comeback?
Nice.
I think that'd be cool. I think that should. They should try
Uh,
that
well, I guess
because that way you
well,
stay socially distant. You just stay in your car.
I feel like the internet kind of does give that kind of place like oh drive no I mean I'm not saying that car like going with the car doing the driving thing is pointless. I love things that are kind of considered pointless by some people because they have their own kind of like vibe. But if it's just about like gathering in a place and watching a movie together in a semi like isolated situation, then in a sense doing like a broadcast like of a movie online would do the same job. So I don't know if it will be like super popular.
Because
It is definitely a venue though.
the point is people want to get out and kind of be outside the home, so that way you can kind of do something with that. And
Oh,
I think there are definitely people who would do it, but I have a feeling it wouldn't be allowed to be done, at least for not for a while.
yeah. Well, I guess it depends on how people watch movies. Like, not all the people want to watch a movie like silent, still, and with discipline or whatever like that. But
Mm-hmm.
I guess some people will definitely want to interact or have their favorite drink or something like that. And uh,
Does Japan have its own classic movie franchises? Like, for example, in America, you've heard of Terminator or Aliens or Predator, Die Hard, Rambo, Rocky, Star Wars, all those kind of big names. Does Japan have stuff like that?
yes, well, okay, some of them are like those movies that will come up once in a few years, or it might take a decade for the new one to come. Yes, some of them are like that, but if we're talking about big franchises that come up over and over and over to the level that they start to lose new ideas and they go back to the previous movie that they made already and remake it again,
Yeah.
there are cartoon series such as things called Doraemon, or um, basically kids like kids movies, like animes that are for kids.
Hmm.
Those are often repeatedly produced. And yes, Doraemon is a good example because it also is the example of a movie series that went out of ideas and decided to go back to one of the older movies they made.
Hmm. What's it about?
So if I go with what Doraemon is, first of all, it's basically a simple story like this. There is a kid called Nobita who sucks at studying, who is not physically amazing, who is lazy, whose only ability is to sleep and less go into sleep in less than 1 second.
Hmm.
And from the future, his son or grandson comes and says, "Because you were like that, my life is screwed. So I'm going to send you a robot to re-educate you or to change you so that you will become a better person."
Hmm.
And this robot is that robot called Doraemon, a blue kind of raccoon-ish, cat-ish robot that has a magical pocket, like a four-dimensional pocket that stores a whole bunch of different future technology. And how the future technology is used by Nobita, Doraemon, and other characters that come up in the story is part of the whole comedy and sci-fi-ish aspect of the whole thing.
Hmm.
And the good thing about the good thing about the Doraemon manga, it was originally a manga, but the good thing about it was that it's not a continuous story. It starts in one story and then ends in one story, and the next story is about a totally separate that's
Oh,
why it was easy to make an anime out.
so it's just like different
And
episodes, like you see in classic cartoons, like Looney Tunes or stuff like that.
yes, exactly. And Doraemon itself, the original manga, yes, the guy who writes it is a good manga writer. And I also saw his other ones, other mangas such as the Black Salesman, like black, not skin color, but just black suits, grim smile, and everything like that. He writes things that are for adults. He writes some sci-fi tales that are actually kind of gruesome, but those ideas and and his also sense of puns and everything is put into a form that is accessible to kids. And the anime was also, I guess, pretty good. I'm not exactly sure how good it was compared to other animes at that time. So they were able to make a movie out of it once in a year, and they noticed that the movie makes a lot of money, so they did it the second year, then third year, and the fourth. And now, what? How many decades has it passed since the first movie came out? I don't know. One thing for sure is that they are out of ideas.
Oh, some people argue the Marvel Cinematic Universe will be that way. Well, maybe it will. I'll dread the day that they reboot Iron Man and give a new Robert Downey Jr. I'll be sad.
You know what's the thing about? You know what happens in that case?
What?
It's gonna be more closer to traditional art where people say, "Who's the Romeo this time? Who's the Juliet this time?" Basically, I mean, if it goes to that stage, it will be a little bit different than just pop culture. But
No, yeah.
if it's only like it was considered that way by people, I guess.
What about the kaiju movies like Godzilla?
That was also something similar. It's just that it did require fun. That's why once the bubble economy collapsed, it was difficult to continue production. So now, yeah, I guess that's like the way it differ from the anime like movie.
Hmm.
But when they did have money, they did make things that, well, not just kaiju movies, but Mask Rider, Power Ranger, those kind of like franchises that are so continuing these days. They were using effects that looked so dangerous and so expensive that people were being amazed by how many was spent on each movie.
No, yeah, I remember because Godzilla the original was made partly in stop motion, right? And they had one of the best stop motion directors or artists to come in and say how long it
Oh
would
yeah,
take to make something like that. And what was it, like years? I think he put it like decades. But then they managed to do it, and it was really cool. Like it's cool how you can see all the different toys that they used to represent the army coming and getting destroyed by Godzilla,
mm-hmm.
and it's always funny to see the dude in a suit.
Yeah, but well, yeah, that's true. It
um,
is an amazing piece of art. Like it's about how to like basically trick the audience in a good way, just so that they don't realize that some of the details are kind of fishy.
oh yeah, definitely. Actually, you can see in Terminator. One of the cool things they have is a scene where it's in the first one when he gets damaged and he gets shot in the eye, and you can see his dick
Mm-hmm.
doesn't look really great. He goes in, and you see Arnold Schwarzenegger taking the knife to himself, and then the screen shifts to where it's hard to tell, but you can see it's a fake Arnold Schwarzenegger, and
Mm-hmm.
when we see him doing the same motion, taking out the eye and revealing the Terminator's eye underneath, and
Yep.
that's when you realize it actually is a robot. You fully see it, and it's so cool. Like it was made when CGI wasn't really a thing yet, so they had to do it all with
Mm.
practical effects. And so when you see the Terminator come in after he's hit with the gas explosion and all the flesh is burned off, you can see that they built the Terminator, but also that it's moving through stop motion because it's you can see the frame rate is a little bit off and looks a little janky, like that it's like jumping almost. Um, and that's because it's stop motion. That's what stop motion looks like. But it's really cool, all those kinds of effects. And you can tell the difference. Some scenes where the scenes where it's full body and it just showed a full body moving, it looked like that. But scenes where it's just a single body part moving, it didn't because they could just record themselves moving that part.
Yeah, honestly, like that's just like sheer creativity right there. I respect those things.
And well, we were talking about it beforehand, but that's why the interesting film. It's definitely visual because you can show two different scenes and our brains will make the connection what those scenes are about. Like you see, there's a bunch of Russian experiments on this, just showing
Hmm.
people different shots and what they thought. And so same look, this same dude just staring down. And then next scene, next shot they show is glass of water, and they ask people, "Oh, he's thirsty." Same dude. Um, then it's a sandwich, and he's like, "This person is hungry." And then the same dude, and they show like a completely unrelated scene shot, like just eggs being made. It's like the guy's making breakfast or something. And it's like even though the shots can have nothing to do with each other at all, people will bridge that connection themselves.
Okay, that's interesting. So just like the way cartoons work, like in a visual way, we also like connect ideas and other information in a sense, like to put them into a single like flow. Ah.
And like that's what makes cinema different. Like you can't really do that with something like theater. You can see all the action there. You can see the whole set. You can see all the people moving around. Whereas film, you can kind of do one thing completely different in one area and film something somewhere else and put it all together, and it makes a story. They don't have to be in one whole place, and it's really cool. It really is a stitch work, kind of like comics are.
Well, then I guess in a sense, because our brain is, in a sense, smart enough to connect all the ideas, but dumb, like not like smart enough to like identify like which one is kind of like fishy. We are able to entertain ourselves with this movie. Mhm. Good. Good, good, good. Gives me more reason to be dumb when I watch movies.
Dude, okay, that's what I've been thinking about. Like, there's so many movies where you just have to. The only way you can enjoy them is if you just shut off your brain. It's like, I'm not gonna think about it. I'm just,
Hmm.
I'm just gonna not think about all the plot holes, not think about the weird plot points, not think about the awkward characters. I'm just gonna watch the spectacle. And
Oh, yeah.
it's one example of that. I'm continuing with Terminator because that's what I've been watching recently.
Okay.
Terminator 3 is a shit show. What it is like poorly written sequel to Terminator 2. The actors don't have the best chemistry, and they're even just I'm not sure it's just the portrayal. It's like what they were written to say just sucked. And that's why most of the movie was just action scene after action scene because you hated every time they stopped to speak. And every scene was very elaborate and like lots of things happening, lots of explosions, always cool shots of Arnold Schwarzenegger being Terminator. Because once it went back to normal, it's just like, and it's just also the person they cast to play John Connor, the lead,
Yeah,
really,
yeah,
really, he did not fit the mold because John Connor is supposed to be like military hero, right? And they show a scene of what he looks like
yeah.
in Terminator 2. Have you scarred? Have you seen wars? That kind of face. And even though he hasn't experienced that yet, this kid, he's just like he looks like a little bitch. He doesn't look like he hurt anyone. He doesn't look like he could be tough. He just looks like some street kid. He doesn't really have any kind of courage to his name. So
Mm.
it makes it really hard to believe what happens. So that movie you kind of just have to shut down. Terminator 4 was a little bit better, but just thinking about it, there's a lot of movies. Also, Aliens is another one I saw, and Aliens 1 and 2
Okay,
are pretty
okay.
good. But Aliens 3 is another one where you just kind of turn your brain off and try to enjoy it. Because, well, that one is weird because it's like none of the setting really makes sense. It's a planet where a maximum security prison is kept on it, and all the men
Hmm.
are have found God, and they're super religious.
Yeah, okay.
So it's just a whole bunch of characters that feel kind of misplaced, and an alien just kills them all for the most part. And also, Ripley shaves off her head and tries to be all like it's really having seen her act in the other movies is really hard to see her beating up people, beating up big guys that are bigger than her.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of pain. Yeah, Luke Skywalker too. Like that's also another one that
And
kind of
the
like,
other thing that they
yeah,
lost is in Aliens 2 and 3, they lost the elements of horror. They kind of just, okay, alien runs and kills things, not the slow, creeping feeling that you're not sure where the alien is. And just the ominous presence that no matter what you do, you can't fight off this creature.
well, I mean, yeah, at that moment, people are going to look for the alien instead of the horror. So I guess no, that's just what happens in a sense.
And I don't know, it's interesting seeing that there is definitely a big change when it comes to going from horror to action. Because in action, there's no suspense for when the alien comes out. Because when he comes out, it's just like all this fierce stuff happening, battles in the background, and also you see a lot of aliens get wasted and die. So it's just
Yeah.
like each one of them has like little effects. Whereas in horror, there's only one, and he has just this presence, this aura,
Yeah,
and
and honestly, yeah, if it's just hard, then you might not even need an alien at then if your purpose is to make like hard. So I guess yeah, just the fact that the presence is doing so much effect is amazing. And
I think I can make a comparison to. Have you know what the Phantom of the Opera is?
yeah, well, I'll be honest, I didn't see the entire like thing though, like just
Anyway,
know like
so
know the gist of it.
the Phantom's always in the background, right? Like
Hmm.
and for the few, except for the few times he comes into the full force on screen running the show, but he's like just to be pulling all the strings. Um, so if you watch the 25th anniversary of it on Netflix, it's amazing the Phantom that they chose because he has so much power. He can do all the highs and all the lows, but the thing about his voice, it just sticks with you. You can feel it deep in your core, no matter where he is, no matter what tone he hits. And it's just his presence which cannot be matched. And I saw this, I saw a version of the play after a different run, not the same cast. And the Phantom, he could hit the highs really well, but he had no power to his voice. He did not have the same impact with his lows. And it just honestly ruined the experience because you weren't enjoying, like, having heard how oppressive the Phantom can be. Hearing this person is like, oh, he's a poser, he can't do anything.
Okay, maybe let's just say if the actor had another role that might be better in that case.
No, yeah, but it's like that. That's the important. It's something that contributes when you want your villain to have this kind of effect on the audience, on the story, on the characters within the story. In a movie, it's how they're shot, the music cues that go in, and the theater, it could be it's predominantly the voice. But for a villain of that caliber, Thanos kind of has that kind of effect too with his booming voice. You need that kind of sense of presence, like of impact of whenever they arrive, they own the show. That's what they're there for.
I guess they are the ones who bring back life to a show where people know already. So in a sense, there's not too much surprise in what you see, aside from like how they do what was supposed to be expected. But were there any movies or like a franchise of movies that you kind of felt something similar? Like, it's not that the storyline or the plot is like too fresh, but something about the way people act or something about the way they show just struck you. Was there anything like that in the past?
Any movies? Huh.
Yeah, limit to movies this time,
Yeah.
just because I'm kind of curious about that.
Yeah, I'm thinking movies. Movies that really struck me. Honestly, the first Terminator and first Aliens were like that with me. Those were really good. Kind of leave you wanting more, trying to figure out how the hell the characters can survive it. But acting itself, I don't think I've ever really been super astonished by a certain actor. Maybe Thanos. He's on the. Oh, actually, there is one. Oh, I can't remember what it's called, but there's this movie.
What is it like?
With it has Morgan Freeman and.
Oh wait, is it about an old detective and a young detective trying to find out these mysterious murder incidents?
And they're all related to the Seven Deadly Sins. Yeah, that's
Seven. Yeah,
the villain of that movie. He had that kind of thing.
Oh yeah. He was honestly like the fact that he seems sane in a sense. Like what he's saying is not exactly too weird, and the way he kind of made it look like that by his acting, that was honestly impressive.
And honestly, the ending of that, it's like that's one of the endings that you can predict it, but even when you predict it, you don't want it to be true. You're in this. You have the same feeling of the protagonist. Like, no, he can't be that sick. Yeah, he can't be that much of a bastard, but he is, and he's just learning to accept that. It's that's I think that's like the best things movies can do, or any form of art, where it pushes you to feel the same kind of emotions that the characters are, to really feel them deeply.
Well, I guess I have two movies like that, so I could share that right now. One was Watchmen, where Rorschach dies, and I saw the Owlman scream out saying no, but that's just that I kind of got into the movie. But I guess a one that might be a little bit more like that. Do you know the movie Mist?
Mist? No, I've never heard of it. What is it?
It's a movie that's based on one of the Stephen King's novel. but
Mm-hmm.
it's just that the director added a ending that is even like more painful, like tragic one.
Huh.
But story is basically there's a town, a normal town, but one day a very thick, endless mist covers the entire town, and people don't know what is happening. But there's something that's not just one thing, but a bunch of something that's walking or moving around the mist. And because they saw people getting murdered by these things, they hide into their like wherever they think is safe. At least most of them try to hide somewhere that's safe. And how people locked down in that kind of situation start to change in attitude and kind of paranoia or even an emergence of a religion in a sense starts happening in that kind of situation, and how the main character who is still keeping relative sanity compared to others tries to save the people that he thinks is worth saving and to escape from people, not the monster that are kind of getting fucked up little by little. But um it's a big spoiler, so I won't say the details. But or you know what, I'll just say, you know what, watch the movie if you guys want to look at it, and feel the same thing. But so the the main characters are in the supermarket. They notice that there is a kind of a cult that's emerging, saying that this is some form of punishment or some sort of trial like God. And the main character finds few people that are still sane and goes on a car and tries to escape. However, they notice that, well, I think that the whole thing was that the gasoline of the car is out or something. Or I forgot what was the detail, but they noticed that they can't really do too much of an escape. That's why the main character pulls out a gun, and to the 3 or 4 survivors other than him, he basically takes them out so that they don't need to go through the misery of being just mauled by monsters. Now he doesn't have a bullet. All the bullets used up at that moment, and he starts to hear a noise outside of the car, and he basically gets ready to get killed by monsters. But what happens is that from the mist that's starting to fade away little by little, you see the U.S. Army coming, which is an indication that the situation is actually getting better, that people can be saved.
Hmm.
But all the people that he was with him, including his child, he shot them and killed right before the guys who could save them came.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, he basically falls down saying, like, what did I do? Like, if only, even if, like, just by, waiting for a little bit more, we could have been saved. But, well, I'm not.
You know what that sounds like to me? It reminds me of Silent Hill. The idea of a
Oh,
town, you know, the town covered with whole mist, and well, at least in that town, what happens is the monsters that you see are reflections of the inner demons that you feel and the past that haunts you.
oh,
Um, for example, I can use the main character of Silent Hill 2.
mm-hmm.
His whole inner conflict is he hasn't seen his wife in a long time, and cause well she passed on,
Mm-hmm.
and he hasn't moved on since, and all the built up kind of emotions of um, move on or be with other people, but holding himself back is showing in the enemy known as Pyramid Head. When Pyramid Head is kind of takes on that aggressive kind of behavior, masculine, also
Mm-hmm.
protective type thing. In regards to the main character, and a lot of the villains, a lot of the small enemies, they're all like feminine type feminine type mannequins and things that look like that, and you know they the clothing that they wear is looks similar to areas where he had been. Like a lot of them are nurses type
Well,
clothing.
head nurses.
Yeah, because well,
Yes. Yeah.
he was in there because of his wife in the hospital and all that kind of stuff. So that's what he would be around all the time, and it's an interesting way of what the myths kind of representing people's issues are. Another one, this lady who kind of falls her whole life kind of falls apart all around her. I think a lot of her family died in a fire, and everywhere she goes, she sees that fire following her. And for a moment, your
Mm.
character gets to see from her eyes and sees the same fire. And then she asks, like, "Would you be willing to stay here to help save me from my pain? Love me?" And he admits that he's not willing to do that, and that kind of just
Ooh.
leaves her like, well, she expected that, and kind of goes on with that same kind of feeling that she's alone in that burning fire, and also not willing to let anyone go along with her.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the personification of being in that mental state, while constantly having that fear.
Honestly, yeah, like that. Oh, by the way, wait, does that come out as a monster at one point? Like that feeling that she has?
No, because she's just an NPC character.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. Okay. Mm.
It's just something you see for a scene, and it's, I don't know. It looks really weird, but and it's like kind of it looks very monstrous and abnormal, and like none of the things that you kind of run into feel like they can be real. When in reality, it is Annie. Hold on a sec. I'll get onto this.
Is that the duck?
That's one of the dogs. No. Stay here, Annie. Okay. Where was I? Oh, so yeah. Silent Hill looks really, um, looks really monstrous in appearance. In I'm gonna take a quote from Patrick. When in reality, I think the things that humans feel and do and think can be much darker than those grotesque kind of appearances. And
Mm.
putting it in that kind of light really shows us how deep those hells kind of are.
Yeah, I guess at the end, like well, even in the Silent Hill, like even if there are gruesome monsters, the main character could become something even worse because he at the end, because of the player, could just torture them around or murder them instantly or decide the destiny of other characters. So I guess yeah, like
That's why
those are just appearances. The true nature is maybe even worse than that.
video games are really interesting as an art form compared to other forms. Is it's a world where you're putting all the power in you, where you can make where you can change the story based on who you want to be, and
Yeah.
or on the flip side, where giving you making it look like you really have all these choices, when in reality you don't. No matter what you do, you can't escape, and you're on the ride to see how much of this character is gonna fall.
And it's kind of interesting how you and the main character kind of merge at some time and like start to get far apart at some time. Yeah, game is definitely an art form in that way. If the game does try to use that kind of thing too.
And the cool thing is, it's really cool for the hero archetype, and I bet that's why a lot of guys love playing video games. Is as the characters in game get stronger and react to it in the story, you yourself feel the same kind of thing. It's because of your mastery of the mechanics and the new ones introduced, using them to the best of your ability to accomplish, to overcome the obstacles that this hero faces. Like the messenger
Mm-hmm.
does a really good job of that.
That's nice. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah.
And Katana Zero does a good thing where the fall kind of thing, where you have this character with a m- negative history, and the mystery unfolds along, and it makes you think that you can really affect the future. and
Mm.
change him for the better, no matter what you do, no matter the choices you make. Even if you could behave horribly or you could follow the rules to a T, it all ends the same.
Nice. I guess I'll share mine because I feel like sharing stuff right now. I don't know why I'm feeling sharing stuff, but I guess one of the gimmick I like about games is the way it starts out with a main character that feels not special, so plain normal that you could kind of have empathy, like sympathy with it. But later on, you start to notice that there's something odd about that person that you didn't realize at the beginning. And by the end of the game, you notice that you, the player, and the main character is a totally separate person. I guess an example of that will be, well, Undertale's one of those examples in a sense. The main character starts out as this non-expressive kind of character, but I think in the genocide route, you notice that no, you are kind of controlling, constraining the main character, but at the end, the main character tells you that I am not you, and you are not in control. And I guess aside from that, I don't know if you know this. There's this Japanese game series called Fate series, and I think one of them also does something similar where the main character seems like a generic heroic kind of character who's living a normal life but wants to live with justice and everything. But you notice that the thing that's driving the whole sensation of justice is kind of weird. And then at the end of the story, you notice that, whoa, this guy is not normal. What have I been controlling for the whole time? Yeah, honestly, it's kind of nice when you notice
That
something
reminds me, did
something
you hear,
wrong.
Doki Doki Literature Club, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that one is interesting because that one takes a trope on its head. And instead of you being in control of everything, it makes you feel like the game is in control of you.
Man, that was one of the games that I was wanting to play in my channel. It's just that my other friend who's part of the channel, he doesn't like horror kind of stuff, so that's why we didn't play it. Did you play it?
Why not? It would be fun. You guys should do it.
Oh no, 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 no. I mean, my friend doesn't like things that are kind of scary. That's why, we decided to play another game. And besides, he was looking for more of the play, the encountering girls, doing the dating sim thing.
So,
So I don't really have any reason to go over all that thing and say, let's play Doki Doki Literature Club. I don't care about how you want to play with girls. I want to look at something weird.
well, that one is kind of like a dating sim kind of thing, kind of.
Yeah, it's a dating sim that ends up with something else. Yes.
That's what made it cool. Um,
Yeah. I will play it personally in the future though.
yeah, I think so. We're coming up on the hour, so I think this is a good
Okay.
time to stop. I guess one last thing,
Okay,
a
yeah.
question with everyone: what stories and games have you been kind of keeping yourself occupied with during all this kind of quarantine? I have the classic movies: Matrix, Terminator, Aliens, all these books around me. And Hide, oh Onagi, what do you got?
Oh yeah, Onagi, okay. There are games that I've been playing these days, such as Bloodborne or some of it's I don't know if you guys know this, but there's Gundam Battle Operation, but I've been into that a little bit more. But aside from that, I'm gonna guess just trying to throw myself into stuff that's odd because that is a good way to make me think. I mean, odd ideas, odd way of expressing the same thing, or something like that. And then like, yeah, aside from that, I'll be honest. I kind of noticed that games that have a lot of girls are not that bad. So
Yeah, yeah. Actually, on top of that, I've been learning the SNK. It's not SNK. Fatal Fury. Fatal
oh,
Fury.
Fatal Fury.
Yeah,
Yeah, nice, nice, nice.
I've been getting better at that, and because I've also
Uh,
been playing Mortal Kombat, so I've been understanding those types of fighters as compared to Smash.
nice. That means you can play the King of Fighters again.
hmm That's what I've been
Nice.
doing. I've been trying to get better at it. So we'll see. All right. So everyone else out there, tell us what are you keeping yourself occupied with in the comments, and we'll see you in the next one.